Good afternoon, students. Can you see my slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
What time is the class starting? Is it 4:30?
Yes, ma'am.
But why people are not here? Have you looked at the PPT of the pumping lemma, which I have put up in the Moodle website? Have you got it, all of you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Or has nobody yet bothered to find out whether it's there or not?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We got it, ma'am.
Yeah. Guess what? You found out?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We got it, ma'am.
Okay, you got it. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. So let's proceed with the next topic today. That is closure properties of context-free languages. Okay. We'll also be doing decision properties. So let's proceed without any further delay. First of all, closure properties. I hope you remember closure properties of regular languages. We had done a host of such properties: union, concatenation, clean closure, substitution, homomorphism, reversal, intersection, difference, complementation, etc. And these were all closed for regular languages. But for context-free languages, please remember, some of these are still do have the closure property. Some of these operations are still closed for context-free languages, but there are at least 3 which are not closed anymore. Okay, so intersection, difference, and complementation are not closed for context-free languages, and context-free languages are closed for union, concatenation, clean closure, substitution, homomorphism and inverse homomorphism, and reversal. Okay, these properties were all, these operations were also closed for regular languages, but these, remember, for context-free languages, they are not closed. Most important. Please understand and remember this. So let's look at these closure properties now one by one. Okay, so context-free languages are closed for union. So what we are going to do is, now remember, just as with regular languages, you can express a regular language in a various ways, like with a finite automata, which can be a DFA, NFA, epsilon, NFA, whatever, or it can be through a regular expression, or it can even be through a regular grammar. Okay, for context-free languages, you can express using context-free grammars, and to some extent using PDAs also. We have already seen how a PDA construction can be used as a proof for a particular language being context-free and so on. Okay. So let L1 and L2 be 2 context-free languages. Now to show that L1 union L2 is also a context-free language, what we are going to do is we are going to take these 2 languages in the form of context-free grammars. Okay. So we have now 2 grammars, and we are going to construct a third context-free grammar such that the language of the grammar is the union of L1 and L2. Okay, and we are going to show that since this construction is possible, the derivations will all give us the strings from this language, that is the union of these 2 languages. Therefore, the union is also a context-free language. Okay, so how do we construct this grammar? So we are looking at grammar construction, not PDA construction. So we have 2 grammars, that is V1, T, P1, S1. Note that this input alphabet is the same. Okay, this T, the set of terminals is the input alphabet. In the one which we create, we are going to create a new V. T remains the same. Okay, P and S, they are all going to be new created, and you know that if we can fill up this 4 tuple, then our grammar is completely specified. Basically, you have to specify the set of productions, because the productions will be using the terminals, will be using the variables, and also production indicates which is the start symbol. Usually it is the first production. Okay, the first production is for the start symbol. If you know that, then it is enough. You know the entire grammar. So the first thing we do is these two grammars that we have been given, it is possible that they have similar variables. In that case, we have to ensure that we rename the variables such that there is no variable which is common to both V1 and V2. Okay, so this intersection has to be fine. And then this union of these two variable sets plus a new start symbol, which is a variable, this set is now the new V. The new set of variables is the union of the variables which are already existing in the two given grammars plus a new start symbol. And set of productions is the union of the sets of productions of the given two grammars plus you add one new production, which is S1 new yields either S new yields either S1 or S2. Okay, where S1 is the start symbol of the first grammar and S2 is the start symbol of the second grammar. So this is one extra production, one extra variable and one production from that new variable, which is the new start symbol. Okay. This grammar which you now have with a new V, with the T remains the same, with a new set of productions and obviously a new start symbol also. This is the grammar which accepts all strings which belong to either L1 or L2 or both. Okay. So how is that? We can show it through the derivations. For any string X in either L1 or L2, okay, the derivation remains exactly the same because remember the first the grammars given to you, that is G1 and G2, actually already exist as subsets in this new grammar. The production rules are there, the variables are there, the terminal symbols obviously are there. Okay, so whatever derivation had produced a particular string X previously, same derivation is going to persist. In addition, the first step will be S new goes to either S1 or S2 depending on to which particular grammar X belongs, S1 or S2. Okay, so using this new production, you can you add this new step to the production. So since the old production also still exists, you can derive exactly the same string, steps to derive the string X. Okay. So this construction, please remember, it is just actually adding this new production S1 or S2. So the language remains the same, and because you have now been able to create a grammar which can derive all the strings of L1 as well as all the strings of L2, so you have the set L1 union L2 and it's a CFG which defines that union. Okay, so this is proving closure of context-free languages under union by creating a grammar, by the construction of a grammar. Next is concatenation. Now concatenation, I think the rest of the constructions you will find it very simple. It follows more or less the same pattern. So we have two languages L1 and L2. So what is the concatenation operation first of all? So one string from one language, another string from another language. If you concatenate the two one after the other, say L1 dot L2, or in the opposite case, it's L2 dot L1, then you produce a new string which should belong to the new language produced by concatenation. Okay. So that is L1 dot L2. So as before, you create a new V and you create a new P, which is actually a superset of the given P with a new production. Here it is S1 dot S2. So you can imagine that the first step of the derivation is going to be S new goes to S1 dot S2. Then from S1, you will produce exactly the same derivation to produce the first half of the string or the first part of the string, and S2 for the second part of the string. So it should not be difficult. Then clean closure. Clean closure, remember, 0 or more occurrences of a given string. Let L be a context-free language, okay, which is defined by a grammar. Now to construct a new grammar whose language is the clean closure of the previous grammar. Now you just add one variable, okay, for the new view, v set of variables. Set of variable remains the same except for one new start symbol added, and the set of productions is s nu s or epsilon. So this you can see will let you derive either 0 instances of a string or multiple instances, as the case may be, as you wish. Okay, so any string you can derive using this grammar now. Then reversal. Reversal actually we have already done. Where have we done reversal of grammars, reversal operation? Where have we seen this?
Left linear. Ma'am,
Louder
left
please,
linear.
louder please.
Ma'am, left linear.
Yes, 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 absolutely. Uh, to convert in left linear grammars, in regular grammars, okay, to convert them to finite automata, and the other way around. What we have always done is reversed it first, reversed all the right hand sides to produce a right linear grammar, and then we use the construction of the right linear grammar to finite automata and so on. Okay, so that is how you can actually reverse any uh, context-free grammar. It is not applicable only for regular grammars, but actually all context-free grammars you can do the same thing. If you reverse the right-hand sides, you can use exactly the same derivation to produce all the sentential forms in reverse and the reversed string finally. So same grammar, only remember for L reversed, you need to reverse all the productions, the right hand sides of all the productions. In fact, the others rest remain the same. If A alpha is in P, then A goes to alpha reversed is in PR, P reversed. Okay, reverse the right hand side of every production. Since every sentential form in a derivation is reversed, and you can produce the reverse strings. Okay, the next operation is substitution. I hope you remember the substitution operation in regular languages, okay, where instead of a particular input symbol, you substitute a regular expression. Or if you substitute a string, you call it a homomorphism. Okay, homomorphism is a special case of substitution. So let's see how substitution is defined in context-free grammars. Now for each terminal symbol A in the input alphabet, okay, here we are calling it sigma, it could be T also, it's the same thing, okay. Let SA, that is the substitution of A, be a language, okay. So what we are doing is we are substituting each symbol by a language, okay. Previously, for example, in regular expression, in case of regular languages, we were replacing each symbol by a regular expression. A regular expression, remember, is nothing but a representation of a regular language. So it was the language you were using to replace every input symbol. Here also you are doing the same, okay. So every input symbol is substituted by a language, that means a set of symbols, set of strings. And for a string, for a given string W, the substituted string would be all the substitutions concatenated together. Okay, so each symbol is concatenated. And remember, the language which you are using to substitute, okay, which you are using as a substitute for a symbol, it could actually belong to a different, it could be using a different input alphabet altogether. Okay, so example, suppose this is your input alphabet 0, 1. So you have a language defined on 0, 1. Now you are defining a substitution such that for S0, note that these are the two input symbols. For S0, you will replace it by strings of the form A and B, and you can see that this is a context-free language altogether. Okay, and S1 you can replace by AA or BB. Okay, note that S1 is actually a subset of S0. So AA and BB, not BB. No, these strings are not part of this language. They are different. But these two strings could possibly replace the input symbol 1. So if you have a string from the some original language, say W, which is 0, 1, remember this is defined on this sigma, okay, then the substitution of the string would be substitution of 0 concatenated with the substitution of 1, which is described as a set of strings, that is a language, okay. So SW now contains so many different strings, A1, B1, AA, okay. That means AA, remember, is substituting this 0, 1 of this 0, okay, after this 0. It is substituting the 1, and A1, B1 is substituting the 0. A1, B1 with BB, or you can have A2, B2 with AA, A2, B2 with BB, and so on, and infinitely on, okay. Even though this S1, this language is not infinite, the first one is infinite, so that produces an infinite substituted language. So the substituted language SW, this is just the substitution of one string, First we looked at the substitution of one character, then one string, okay. Now a set of such strings makes up a language, so you can define a substitution on a language also, okay. If L is a context-free language and the substitution SL is defined on L, that is such that for every symbol SA, every symbol A, SA is a context-free language. Now this note here that for every symbol we are substituting a language. Now if we put the restriction that this substituting language is a context-free language, okay, it can be a regular expression also, it can be a context-free language, it can be just a set of strings as given here, okay. So if it is a context-free language and can be produced by a grammar, then the substitution also produces, the substituted language is also going to be context-free, okay. So this is the definition of the substitution operation in case of context-free languages. So what is SL? SL, this L is actually a set of strings. You know that this L is a context-free language, which is nothing but a collection of, it's a set of strings, it's a collection of strings. Now we know how to substitute, apply substitution on the string, on a string, okay. So every language produced by this substitution of every string, so for W1 you have S1, W2 you have SW2, okay, and so on. So remember these substituted, this is actually something like this, okay, SW, which is also a collection of strings. So this SW is a collection of strings. So these are also languages in their turn, okay, and each of these has to be a context-free language for the origin, the entire substituted language SL to be a context-free language, okay. So if each of these substitutions is context-free, then the language substitution is also context-free. Is this clear? Is this operation, substitution operation clear to you? Please try to break up the substitution operation into 3 stages. The first is the substitution of a symbol, an input symbol. The second is the substitution of a string, which is a concatenation of input symbols, okay. So every input symbol is substituted. And the third is the substitution of a language, which is a collection of strings, okay. So this is now producing a substituted language. SL is this substituted language, which is going to be context-free if every substitution SA for every input symbol is a context-free language, okay. Now context-free language for the strings, these are just concatenations of these substituted languages, as you have seen here. See, remember, these are just concatenation of the substituting languages. If these individual languages are context-free, then concatenation, we have already shown that concatenation produces context, is closed for context-free languages, okay. So this SW therefore will be context-free, and if SW is context-free, then the substituted language for the entire language SL is also going to be context-free. So context-free languages are closed under substitution. So let's see how we can prove it by construction. So first you have the grammar given for a language. Now for every remember that what is this A here in the second statement? Anybody? What is this A here in the second statement? SA.
Ma'am, the substituted
No,
starting
just the A. Where do you get this A from?
state.
Pardon? Beg your pardon, please come again. What is this A here? A. There is a context-free grammar for each SA. What is this A? A is an input character from T. Okay. So you have a language defined by a context-free grammar, VTPS. Okay. A is every input symbol. Okay. Because every input symbol has its own substitution, and each of these substituting languages SA are also context free. If they are context free, they have their own grammars. Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes.
is essay the substituted starting state, ma'am?
Beg your pardon. Starting state means
Ma'am, like the S that starts, ma'am, like
okay. Okay. I understood. I think I'll go back 2 slides and then it might be easier. Okay, so let's start the substitution part again. Okay, I told you substitution, we have to understand it in 3 steps. First is substituting a single input symbol, okay, from the set of terminals or sigma, you can say, the alphabet, input alphabet. A is nothing but a terminal symbol or an input symbol from sigma, or we can also call it T. Please remember, if we are saying VTPS, then this is T. Okay. So SA is an input symbol. Every symbol is substituted by a language, SA. SA is nothing but a language. And for substitution to be closed, this SA also has to be a context-free language. And remember, every context-free language has a context-free grammar. Okay. So first of all, we take a context-free language L, okay, which is defined by some grammar VTPS or VT, in this case V sigma PS. Okay, so these are the input symbols. Then we define substitution for a string, which is nothing but concatenation of CFLs. Okay, each of these concatenating CFLs are themselves the context-free languages, okay, which are concatenated, and concatenation, you know, produces a context-free language. Okay, and then this collection of these substituted strings produces the substitution for the language. So we are dealing with the substitution for the language. Okay, so the language for which we are defining the substitution is L, which is defined by VTPS. Okay, so this A here is nothing but an input symbol from this T set of terminals. It's an input symbol or a terminal symbol. Okay, and SA is the context-free language which substitutes A, which is the substitution for A. A is replaced by the context-free language SA. Because SA is a context-free language, it is defined by its own grammar, GA, which is VATAPA, you can see. So if there are n number of input terminal symbols in T, then how many grammars are we dealing with? If there are n numbers, say n for New Delhi, if there are n number of such input symbols or terminal symbols in T, then here how many context-free grammars are we dealing with? No answer?
Can you just repeat that again? The question.
Remember, VTPS, a language, context-free language, is defined by a context-free grammar, G. Okay, so G defines a context-free language. It's a context-free grammar. Okay, defined by VTPS, defined as VTPS. Now this T contains, say, n number of input symbols, n for New Delhi, small n. And each of these symbols has a substitution defined. The substitution for each symbol is itself a context-free language. Okay, so if A is a symbol, SA is a substitution for A, and A itself is a context-free language, this SA. Okay, and since it's a context-free language, it is defined by a context-free grammar, GA. Okay, VA, TA, PA, SA. Okay, so if there are n number of input symbols, how many context-free grammars are we getting here?
For n.
Actually, it is n plus 1. Please don't forget the original one. This,
Acha,
you're
n.
right. If there are n symbols, you will have n substituting languages defined, which are substitutions for these n input terminals. And there is this original grammar, G, which is defining the original language on which you are defining substitutions. Okay. So please remember, we are handling so many different grammars here. Okay. Now what we are going to do is, given this n plus 1 grammars, we are going to create yet another grammar G prime. Okay. Say B prime, T prime, P prime, S remains the same as this original S. Okay. For the substituted language. So how are we going to create this grammar? And the construction of this grammar is a proof that substitution is closed for context-free languages. Okay. So if every substituting language is context-free, then the substituted language SL will also be context-free, and we'll show that by creating a grammar for it, which is G prime. Okay. So let's create each of these components individually. S only we don't need to create because it remains the same. So P prime now consists of the productions of P, okay, this productions which originally were there in G, but for every terminal symbol in the right hand side, productions, you know, terminal symbols will be on the right hand side only. For every terminal symbol on the right hand side of any production, instead of the terminal symbol A, we will put the start symbol of the substituting language. We will put SA. Okay. So remember, every terminal symbol is replaced by a context-free language. Okay. For that context-free language, you have a grammar which defines it. Okay. Which has its own start symbol SA. Okay. So in all the right hand sides of the productions, we will replace this A by SA, which is the start symbol for that grammar. Okay. I forgot a point here. We will make sure that all variables are mutually exclusive. That also we can do. That is simple enough. We just rename variables if necessary. Please include that. I forgot that. Okay. Now, all productions in PA. So all the productions in this substituting grammar, we will add to this new grammar which we are creating, P dash. Okay. And those, they remain the same. The right hand sides remain the same. Notice A will not appear anywhere because you are actually defining it on a different terminal input terminal set altogether, that is TA. Okay. So all these productions from these n grammars that have been provided as substitutions, they will all be added. All the productions of this original grammar, I told you we are dealing with n plus 1 grammar, and we are going to create the n plus 2th grammar we are creating. So G prime is the n plus 2th grammar which we are dealing with. Okay. So if we call G the first grammar or the original grammar, okay, all the productions of this original grammar will be here, replacing the terminal symbols on right hand sides. All the productions of the n substituting grammars will be here as it is. Okay. And how do we produce the strings now of the substituted language? Now note that every string of this original language L, suppose there's a parse tree like this. Okay. Suppose for any string from this original language L, okay, you have a parse tree of this form where the terminals are labeled. The start symbol will be this S. As you know, the root is the start symbol. Internal symbols will be other variables, and the terminals are actually supposed to be labeled by the input terminal. The terminals, or rather the leaf nodes, are labeled by the terminal symbols, okay, or the input symbols. Let's say A1, if you call them A1, A2, etc. Instead of those terminal symbols now, because we have removed all the terminal symbols from the right hand side, we will be producing SA1, SA2, SA3, etc. Okay, so this part of the parse tree is the same as the original one, except that the leaf nodes have been relabeled. Instead of the terminal symbols, we have the start symbols of their respective grammars, respective substituting grammars. And then the second part is, because you have a start symbol, you have a subtree under it, okay, which derives any string from this substituting context-free language. Okay, so this part, the original part of the parse tree, is like looking like this. Instead of the terminal leaf symbols, leaf nodes, you have attached a subtree each, rooted at the start symbol for the substituting grammar. And remember, this is also a parse tree from a context-free language, because the substituting language is also context-free. If this substituting language is context-free and has a parse tree like this, and the original was already a context-free language and has a parse tree, what you have done is you have simply grown the tree bigger. That's all. Okay, the strings could be bigger, but this entire parse tree now, this bigger tree now, is also a valid parse tree for this context-free language. Okay, so by this process, you can derive all the strings which appear in the substituted language SL. Okay, for every terminal symbol, you have a separate context-free language which can replace it, and which can derive many strings possibly. Okay, and each of these strings would be derived in the subtree which is rooted at this point. Can you see what is happening? Is this part of the derivation clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just keep in mind that the stock part of the parse tree comes from the original language for which we are substituting, and this bottom subtrees, okay, the subtrees hanging at the leaves, which were originally leaves but have now been turned into subtrees, these are the substituting languages, the ones which are substituting for each of the input symbols. Okay, so but the total thing is still a valid parse tree for a context-free language. Okay, so by this construction, actually you can prove that substitution also produces a context-free language if the substituting languages themselves are context-free. Okay, so let's take an example of a substitution on a context-free languages. So let's take the language of palindromes, binary palindromes. Okay, where which input alphabet is 0, 1, the input alphabet. So binary palindromes, I hope, I think you must have written the context-free grammar for it. Have you written the grammar for it?
No, ma'am.
Yes, no?
No, ma'am.
Then you should do it immediately. You should actually be writing. What I will do is I will put up some assignments on the Moodle website. Please make sure that you are trying to solve these assignments. Okay, you should be able to produce context-free grammars for many different types of context-free languages by now. Binary palindromes is actually a very, very simple context-free language. Can anybody tell me what the language will be like? You can read out the production. Please try to generate this language for binary palindromes. You can make it non-empty binary palindromes. Please try to generate the language and then tell me. read out the productions.
Ma'am, the production will be like S goes to
Louder,
0.
please. I don't know. I'm finding it difficult to. Just a minute. Let me increase my volume.
Ma'am, the productions will be like S goes to 0SO or 1S1.
Yes.
And in case it's an empty string, it will be epsilon only.
It could be if you are including empty strings, you make it epsilon. What if you want to make it non-empty?
Then remove the epsilon. Ma'am.
But then how will you remove S?
Oh, okay.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, S will goes to 0, S will goes to 1, S will
1.
goes to
Yes.
0, S0 and 1 S1.
Not 1 is 1. It should be 0S0 or 1S1 or 0 or 1. So you are permitting strings of size 1 or more. Okay, so non-empty. Suppose I say that your palindromes should be of even length. Then what will be your grammar?
Ma'am, we will be simply replace 0 by 0, 0 and 1 by 1, 1.
Very good. Yes, you're absolutely right. So if I say that your palindromes should be non-empty, then please make sure that you write 0S0, 1S1, 0 or 1 or 0, 0, 1, 1. Okay, so that 0 and 1 will allow you to create palindromes of odd length, and 0, 0 and 1, 1 will allow you to create palindromes of even length. Okay, so if you are asked to create only odd length palindromes, you don't add that 0, 0 and 1, 1 options. Okay, just leave 0 and 1. And if you are allowed to create palindromes, possibly empty ones also, then make it epsilon. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, so suppose we have this grammar defined, and on this we are defining, let's come back to substitution. Okay, now on this we define a substitution like this. So S0 for this is the original substitution that we had discussed before. Okay, so S0 is defined by the language A and B N. What are the productions for this? Is it context free? It is context free, you know it. But what are the productions? How will you generate this language? This sir must have done, I'm sure.
Ma'am, S goes to AS and then AS and AS will goes to ma'am epsilon.
AS, the way, but B does not appear anywhere. I'm trying to write A and
Yes.
BN.
Okay, ma'am. Sorry.
Yeah. ASB or epsilon. Will that work? No, epsilon you cannot add. You have to write AB because it is greater than equal to 1. Okay, so S derives ASB or AB. Will that work?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? What about the second language, S1, XX and YY? How will you write the context free grammar for this? This is the simplest of the lot. S derives XX or YY because we have only two strings, right? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So these both of these are context free languages. That much is sure. Okay. Now let's show that SL is also CFL. This is not correct actually. This must be 0 or 1, right? Because it has to be greater than epsilon, greater than equal to 1. So it has to, there has to be 0 and 1. This, you can see, it is not correct. So, well, assuming it's correct. So what is the context-free grammar for S0? Oh, acha, I'm sorry. This is the palindrome. This is the binary palindrome. Okay, so what is the context-free grammar for S0? This is ASB and AB. Yes. And what is the context-free grammar for S1? S goes to XX or YY. Okay. Therefore, so note here two input symbols 0 and 1, and you are dealing with n plus 1 number of grammars. One for the original grammar, one for the substituting grammar for S0, one for the substituting grammar for input symbol 1. Okay, and the combined context-free language will be, remember, all the productions of the original grammar given, that is L. Okay, only for S, every 0 you must replace by S0. So S0 S, S0, S1 S, S1, epsilon. Okay, this is from the original grammar. Then all the productions of S0, okay, S0, ASB, AB, same, they remain the same. All the productions of S1, S1, XX, YY. Taken together, this now is the grammar for the substituted language SL. Okay, so construction of the substituted context-free grammar, is it clear to all of you? The actual process looks complicated, but putting it together is not difficult. You have to just remember to add all productions. And for the original language, every input terminal symbol must be replaced by the start symbol. Okay, S0. 0 for 0 you must replace by S0 and so on. So this is the replaced part. That is all there is to it. Yes?
Ma'am, I have a confusion here.
Yes.
Ma'am, the last one is a grammar for palindrome.
Last one is not a grammar for palindrome. Palindrome is this one, L. This one is the grammar for palindrome. Now using this, you can create even palindromes, odd palindromes, all kinds of palindromes, even empty palindromes. It doesn't say anything, okay? So remember, language of binary palindromes, okay? It can be anything. So every possible palindrome can be created by this CFG for L. This one says greater than equal to 1. This S0, A and BN. It has to be greater than equal to 1. Okay, so that is why you do not have epsilon here, you have AB. Can you see that? Any other confusion?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So let's proceed. So this is the proof of closure for the substitution operation. First, you must understand the substitution operation for context-free grammars, then the proof of closure. Okay. Now, some negative results. Now, homomorphism and inverse homomorphism, we are not dealing with explicitly. Homomorphism is very similar because it's same as substitution. Only for single strings, it will actually be simpler. And inverse homomorphism can be proved by PDA construction. But I think I'm going to skip it for the present. If anybody is interested, you might refer to the Martin book. Excuse me for a minute, I'll just give you the reference. not Martin, it is in the Motwani book. Okay, Aho Motwani Ulman. It is in the Aho Motwani Ulman book. You can look it up. It is possible to prove that the inverse homomorphism also produces a context-free language by creating a PDA for it. Okay, so PDA construction part I am not going to discuss in class. So let's now look at some negative results. That is, all those operations for which it is not closed. Okay. So the first is intersection. Now context-free languages are not closed for intersection. Now here we are going to give existential proofs. Okay, what is existential proof? An exception you can say which shows that the original theorem cannot hold. So let's take two languages, L1. Note that L1 is 0n, 1n, 2i. Is it a context-free language?
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
create a PDF for it? Yes or no? Loudly?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So you actually just need to check that 0 and 1 are the same number. Okay, the same number of zeros, 0 and 1. And 2, as long as there is at least one input symbol 2, then it is good enough. Okay, so it is possible to check. Similarly, L2 is 0i, 1 and 2n. This also you can easily create a PDA. Okay, you check that there is at least 1 0, and then when you start seeing ones, you push into the stack, and when you start seeing twos, you pop from the stack and check that they are equal number. Okay, so it is possible to create a PDA very easily, and both of these are context free. Now, what about L1 intersection L2? How will you define L1 intersection L2? So L1 is strings of zeros, ones and twos in that order, okay, where you have equal number of zeros and ones. And L2 is strings of zeros, ones and twos in that order, where you have equal number of ones and twos. And intersection of these two is strings of zeros, ones and twos in that order, where you have equal number of zeros and ones and twos. Okay, so from L1 we say zeros and ones have to be the same, so 0 and 1n. And from L2 we say that 1 and 2 have to be the same, so 1n and 2n. So this is the 0 and 1 and 2n is the intersection of L1 and L2. Can you see that? Are you all convinced?
Yes, ma'am.
And you also know that this is not a CFL. Okay, not only can you not create a PDA for it, but you have actually also the formal proof using pumping lemma. We have discussed it in the previous class. Remember? Okay, so two context-free languages, L1 and L2, intersection of these two can produce a language which is not context-free. So obviously intersection is not closed for context-free languages. This is an existential proof, a particular single example which is proving, which shows that it is not possible. Similarly, you can come up with many different such existential proofs. Okay, so CFLs are not closed. Now complementation. Because they are not closed for intersection, now complementation, or rather the intersection, you can define using complementation. You have seen that already. Okay, this is from set theory. Okay, so L1 complement, union, L2 complement, and complement of the whole of that. That is the intersection of L1 and L2. Okay, now L1 and L2, it is not supposed to produce a context-free language, but note here that the two different operations, out of the two different operations, union is actually closed for context-free languages. So if complementation also is closed, then intersection also has to be closed. Okay, so to make sure that it is the intersection is not closed, or rather we know that it is not closed, so obviously this tells us that complement cannot be closed, right? Okay, So complementation is not closed for context-free languages. Similarly, for difference, difference also actually is defined in more or less the same way. Because complementation is not closed. Now complementation, you can always define it as this is your universal set, okay, sigma star minus L. Now sigma star is context free, okay, this is clear, and L, we are starting with a context free language, okay. Now if difference were to be excuse me, if difference were to be closed, then complementation also would be closed. If complementation were to be closed, then intersection would be closed, and we have already shown that it is not closed by existential proof, okay. So again, by this logic or by this justification, complement difference is also not closed for context free languages, okay. Okay, now before going to membership, I wanted to add something here. That is, if you have L1 minus L2, or rather, okay, L1, please write down. If you have L1 minus L2, and L1 is a context-free language, and L2 is a regular language, and L2 is a regular language, then context-free language minus regular language is context-free. Context-free language minus regular language is a context-free language. Okay, so L1 and L2, if both L1 and L2 are context-free, then the difference L1 minus L2 is not context-free. But if L1 and L2, L1 is context-free and L2 is regular, then L1 minus L2 is context-free. Okay, how will you prove this? Actually, see, L minus R, L1 minus L2, okay, you can write it as L1 intersection L2 complement. Can you write that? L1 minus L2, can you write it as L1 intersection L2 complement? No response. I hope all of you have notebooks and you're writing down what I'm saying. Unfortunately, I don't have my notebook, so I can't show you on the screen. So L1 minus L2, if L2 is a regular language, then L1 minus L2 is context free. Okay, that is because L1 minus L2 can be written as L1 minus L2 L1 intersection L2 complement. It's not intersection, it is, I think. Okay, and since L2 complement is also regular, so that is the reason why L1 intersection L2 produces a regular language. Actually, it is possible to prove it. Okay, let's not waste time on this. Just keep in mind that if the second one is regular, then it produces a context-free language. Now let's go to decision properties. How am I for time? Can I carry on for a while? Do you have a class after this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a class. When is it beginning?
At 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Okay, fine. I just need 10 minutes more. Then I can finish this. In that case, we won't have to have a class tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll have to continue tomorrow. I don't think it will take too long. So let's go to decision properties. Okay. The first decision property is membership. how do you decide? Now, please try to recall what are decision properties. What are decisions? Decisions are where you have an algorithm to give a yes/no answer, which works in a finite number of steps. So there has to be some finite a set of jobs that or set of actions that you can take to produce a yes, definite yes/no answer, no undecidability here. Okay. So what we have first property is whether or not a particular string belongs to a given context-free language. That is the membership question. Okay. So can we take a decision? Actually, if we have a PDA acceptance, you know, is a finite state process. Okay. In finite number of steps, you can check whether or not it is accepted by a PDA. Okay. So PDA acceptance gives you a membership algorithm, membership checking algorithm. That's very obvious. For any given string, it will have a derivation in G requiring at most 2 into, this is the length of the string, -1 number of steps. This we have proved already in pumping lemma. Do you remember that? Okay. So it will have a derivation which will have a height of this much. So if you check all derivations up to 2 into mod x -1 number of steps and no derivation of x can be found, then x does not belong to the language. So by the number of steps of a derivation also, you can prove that a particular string does not belong to a language. Okay, so it's a finite checking. The next is emptiness. Now for emptiness check of a grammar, given a grammar, whether it is empty or not. The first is to check using generating test and reachability. Have you studied generating test and reachability test yet in the simplification of context-free grammars? Useless symbols. Have you studied that yet? Has sir completed that portion? How to remove useless symbols from a grammar? Yes or no? Unit productions, useless symbols. Have you removed this yet?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you must have done the generating test and reachability test. Can anybody tell me what the generating test tells?
Ma'am, it tells that does this non-terminal generate something a string or not? It's empty or not?
Does the non-terminal generate a terminal string or not? You're
Yes.
right. Yes. And what about the reachability test?
If this non-terminal can be reached from other non-terminal or not?
Not other non-terminal, from the start symbol.
From the start symbol, okay.
Okay, so starting from the start symbol, is it possible to produce a derivation in which this particular non-terminal appears in a sentential form? Okay, so can you use this non-terminal in a derivation starting from the start symbol or not? So every non-terminal which passes the generating test and the reachability test is a useful symbol. Okay, there might be some useless symbols also. So all those which are not useful, we have to remove to make the grammar smaller and more compact. So that is the useless symbol removal. So this generating test and reachability test can also be used to check whether the grammar is empty or not. Okay. So if any terminal string can be generated from a non-terminal, and if that non-terminal also passes the reachability test, then obviously the grammar is non-empty. There is some string which can be produced. Now there is also a theorem. Let P be the number of variables. This theorem is similar. Can be you can say it's a lemma of your pumping lemma. It is a corollary of your pumping lemma. Okay. Let P be the number of variables in the grammar G, and let N be equal to 2 to the power P plus 1. If LG is empty, if and only if, please note this, there exists no string of size less than n in it. If there is no string of size less than n in it, then the grammar is empty. What is this? Why this capping of the size of the strings? Why are we putting this cap on the size of the strings? And what does this theorem, how does it help us to check emptiness? Why do we say that this is a test for emptiness?
Ma'am, just one
Yes.
confusion, ma'am, here.
Yes.
Ma'am, the grammar is in CNF or it's a general grammar? Grammar should be in CNF, ma'am.
You can always assume CNF.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, assume a CNF, because see, every context-free language, if you remove epsilon, that is, will always have a corresponding CNF. That is why it's a normal form. And pumping lemma is generally defined on CNFs only. We have proved it on CNF, right? So let's assume CNF. But why are we saying that this is an emptiness test? Algorithm for checking emptiness. See, you can always use a combinatorial algorithm to produce, keep on producing strings. See, you remember we were enumerating strings of a language, start with the smallest string of size 1, then find all the strings of size 2, then find all the strings of size 3. We were doing this exercise in one of the older classes. Do you remember? This you can continue to do till n. Okay, that is a finite step process, right? And in the process, if you find that you cannot find any string till size n, then you can safely say that the language does not have any string in it. It is an empty language. Is that clear? So you have a finite step checking for emptiness. If by n, by the time you reach n, you have not found a single string, then you don't need to search anymore. It is not as if you have to go on searching for infinite steps. Okay, and because we have a finite number of steps in which we can give a definite yes, no answer, that's why this is a checking algorithm. It's an algorithm for checking emptiness. Okay, and the proof of this theorem is given here. It's very similar. It uses pumping lemma. I'm sure all of you can do it, understand it. I'm not going into it step by step. Next is infiniteness. Okay. So how do you check for infiniteness? This also is similar. It is also derived from pumping lemma. If LG is infinite, there must be a string U in LG such that the length of U lies between n and 2n. N inclusive, 2n, it must be less than 2n, strictly less than 2n. Okay, so in this range, if you try to enumerate the strings, okay, if you can find a single string, then you can safely say that it's an infinite language. Why? Because by pumping lemma, you can pump and create bigger strings as many times as you like. Okay. So this is the test for infiniteness. And when do you say that a language is finite? If it is non-empty and also not infinite, then it is finite. Okay. So two checks can tell you whether it is finite or not. Now, so we have looked at several properties which are decidable, okay, for which you can have decision algorithms: membership, emptiness, infiniteness, and also finiteness. Now let's look at some undecidable problems which cannot really be decided. First is a given language ambiguous? Whether it is inherently ambiguous, it is ambiguous or not. Whether a given CFG, there is no algorithm to decide this, okay. You have to use your common sense and try to make out. Okay? Try to find a string which can be derived, which can have two different parse trees. If it has two different parse trees for any single string, then that grammar is ambiguous. Is a given context-free language inherently ambiguous? What is the difference between a grammar being ambiguous and a language being inherently ambiguous? I hope you have noted the difference in the terminology. Okay, what is inherently ambiguous? Anybody?
Ma'am, you are muted.
Yes, please. Please give your answer again.
Ma'am, in the
What is-
middle of the question, you got muted. So can you ask again?
What is the difference between an ambiguous grammar and an inherently ambiguous language, context-free
Mm,
language?
a CFL will be inherently ambiguous if all the grammar that will generate CFL are ambiguous, then CFL is inherently ambiguous. Is it?
Are are ambiguous. You are absolutely correct. Okay,
Okay.
so a CFL, a context-free language, is said to be inherently ambiguous if it is impossible to find a non-ambiguous grammar for it. If every grammar which produces it is ambiguous. Okay, ambiguous grammar, I have already told you, if you can produce two parse trees for a same string, but sometimes we have certain languages for which we have an ambiguous grammar, but with some modification, addition of some extra variables, etc., we can produce a corresponding non-ambiguous grammar which describes the same language. I think you must have done this exercise for arithmetic expressions, for the if then else statement. I'm sure some must have discussed those. Okay, so it is possible sometimes to convert an ambiguous grammar into a corresponding or equivalent non-ambiguous one. Okay, so these languages are not inherently ambiguous. Okay, these are not inherently ambiguous languages. A particular grammar might be ambiguous, but if there exists a language for which you can never find a corresponding non-ambiguous version of the grammar, then those languages are inherently ambiguous. Okay, and that is a smaller subset within CFL. Please remember that. Okay, is the intersection of two CFLs empty or not? This is again, there is no decided set procedure to decide this. Is a given CFL language, context-free language, equal to the universal set? We cannot decide that. So these are some inherently undecidable problems in context-free languages. Okay. So this is about the properties of context-free languages. I'm stopping here today. And actually, I have completed the topic. So tomorrow's class I will not take. Actually, sir is out of station. If he returns, then he might take tomorrow's class. Else, tomorrow's class will not be held. We will contact your CR and let him know. Okay. So what time is tomorrow's class?
Ma'am, 4:30 only, I guess so.
4:30. Okay. So tomorrow's class, whether or not will be held, I'll talk to Shubhrajit sir and let you know. If it is held, your sir will continue with, I think some portion of PD is left. Yes. Yes.
Ma'am, I have a question, ma'am.
Yes, please, please.
Ma'am, what is n in the statement if the grammar of length n?
Where? Which place? Tell me.
If
Here?
a statement is given like, ma'am, if a statement is given like a grammar of length n, then what is n here?
Grammar of length n. Usually a statement like that will not be given because grammar does not have a length. It might say grammar consisting of n productions or a grammar defined on n number of variables, something like that. Okay, but grammar does not have a length, but a derivation could have a length. A derivation can usually have a length. It's a number of steps. Okay, if you create a parse tree, the height of the parse tree is the length of your derivation, usually. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Any other doubt which you might like to ask? Okay, now we are approaching the end of the course, even though there is quite a significant part left and there are 2 whole weeks of classes left. Sir will be continuing. It is possible that I might not meet you again in this course. So if you have any confusion, you can always contact me by mail. You can send me a mail and I'll try to reply always. Okay, and your exam also, sir will give you the necessary instructions for the exam before the exam is going to be held. Okay, so all the best, and if we do not meet again in this semester, do well in your exam and every exam henceforth. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll stop the class here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll put up the PPT and I'll also put up some of the assignments which I have promised you. But do follow the Moodle page and work out the assignments. They will be good exercises. You are supposed to create lots of context-free grammars, lots of finite automata, PDAs, Turing machines, etc. Thank you. You can leave now.
Thank you, ma'am.